Hello everyone, welcome. In this video, let's keep talking about some of the josekis that arise from white's challenge to black's enclosure in this situation. So this attachment at number 1 is the optimal move, right? So that is why these videos are quite important because you'll definitely see your opponents play this enclosure at some point in your playing career, and you yourself might want to play this and try it out. So you need to know how to approach it and how to defend this pattern. So knowing both sides is very important. Well, some josekis are avoidable, like the flying knife joseki, super complicated, a big headache, but both sides can take steps or make certain moves to totally avoid it. So it is possible to never play the flying knife joseki, but I doubt if you can ever avoid the josekis we're going to talk about today, right? Because it is something that is very common these days in the age of AI. And these josekis are a gift from AI because I think before AI, we are not very confident about challenging these enclosures with an attachment. It just seemed a little too aggressive. But AI has taught us that playing these attachments is the best way to put pressure on your opponent. And surprisingly, as you'll see, some of these moves are very resilient. White can be very, very resilient despite not having any control of the corner territory. Right? Just by playing on the outside, some of these moves are really resilient, and black doesn't have very good ways to counterattack. So that's something that we're going to see in a lot of these variations in the next few videos. So how should black respond to this attachment? The optimal and most common move is A, which is a hane on the inside. It protects the corner territory, and that's something we're going to look at in this video. In the next video, we'll cover B, which is a hane on the outside. It gets really complicated. According to AI, it's not optimal, but as a human player, you might want to play this sometimes to challenge your opponents. If your opponent doesn't know, you stand to benefit a lot, right? Because this is a harsh move. If white doesn't know what to do, then white will be in trouble. But if white does know what to do, then white will be okay. It will still be playable. And then there's C, D, and E. A little bit slower. We'll cover those in the end. Okay, so let's look at this hane on the inside. So it basically means please do not come into the corner. You can have a little bit of the influence on the outside, right? That's what black is saying to white in this situation. And white's move has to be right here at number 3. We saw this pattern in the last video, right? If you just play this move, these moves on the 4th line here, 1 to 3 and 5, it's just hard for amateur players to pull it off in most situations. AI will be okay with this, right? It's not optimal for white, but AI will say, fine, I'll use these stones some ways, somehow, down the line. But if you play this way, you just solidify black's corner. So, not recommended for amateur players. So the correct move is number 3, right here, this hane on the outside. This is a really interesting move. So what should black do in this situation? You might be tempted to play the counterattack, right? Cutting here, always a counterattack, pretty harsh move. And number 5, of course, will extend. Now what, right? If black simply extends here, connects here, then what happens is that this is the pattern we saw in the last video, right? We said cutting here, number 4, is actually it seems harsh, but it's actually a very bad move for black in this situation, right? It is the equivalent of white playing here, right? We got to this pattern. We said black has to stand down. Black cannot cut here because, white can play this atari first on the 2nd line. Black needs to connect, and then white plays 2 atari moves 9 and 11. Black captures, and white completes the shape with number 13, right? So black is super over-concentrated. 8 stones surrounding and capturing 2 stones, right? And white's shape here on the outside is very, very efficient, very strong, right? This cut doesn't work. This cut will only kill the stone on the 2nd line. Also doesn't really matter, right? So white's shape will be very, very strong. So that's actually why this counterattack doesn't work. If you connect here, we'll just go back to this pattern. Look at it again, right? So kind of an overplay. by black, but what it gets is over concentration. What else can black try in this situation? Maybe this, right? This Atari. And in this situation, white will have to stand down. So white will have to stand down. White cannot sacrifice this stone. Black's shape, after capturing this, is simply a little too strong. And the problem is that white actually cannot capture number 2, right? Either way you block, black will be able to escape or capture the corner this way. So this is not going to be okay for white. So white needs to stand down. Now what? Right, now obviously there's a cutting point at number 9, so black needs to address that. So if black connects here, then once again, what we'll have is white taking a stone here and black taking these 2 white stones. Very similar to the pattern we just saw. As we mentioned in the last video, number 1 and 5 are kind of throwaway stones. They're not that important. And white's capturing number 6 and building a pretty solid base on the upper side and getting sente is good enough, right? So this is going to be good for white. What about more aggressive moves like this? And what happens is that white can push here. If you capture, then right this way, number 2 will be captured. Right, there's no way for number 2 to escape. If black stands down, then white just pushes through. The cutting point is still here, right? White can still capture this way, very, very solid, right? And playing this Atari also doesn't work. Black is still going to be dead. So just pushing through, playing here, this cuts, right? So this is not playable for black. This is not really playable for black after this push. And this stone on the outside will be cut off, right? So not really playable. So the best black can do is probably just connect here after 4 and 6, which are wrong moves in the situation. And then maybe white can play this, or maybe white can just play something like that. Black still owes a move here, right? Black cannot take sente because white will just break out. Anyway, so that is why number 1 and 3 doesn't seem like very harsh moves, but it's actually really resilient. Black simply does not have this Atari on the outside. It's not optimal, right? It kind of reminds me of this pattern that we already saw, right? The small knight's enclosure, right? This attachment and this honey, right? Very similar. You might be thinking, black can capture number 7, but actually no, number 4 will be cut off, right? This way will be cut off, and this is not playable for black. So that is why these attachment and hane, these are very, very effective moves, especially in the age of AI. I think AI has shown us that these moves are very, very effective, not just in the corner josekis, but often on the side, right? If you want to attach a stone, right? These types of moves, very, very common and very, very effective. So if black cannot counterattack, what should black do? Right. So obviously there's a cutting point here at number 4. So should black play number 4? Not really. Number 4 is a little too slow, and white can actually take sente. Once again, the theme, recurring theme in a lot of these videos, a lot of these josekis is that some of these stones are throwaway stones. So white doesn't really care. So white already made an exchange with its stones here on the outside, and with 2 black stones here on the 3rd line, right? If you play 2 moves on the 3rd line, that's not big. It solidifies the corner, sure, but it's not that efficient. And white play 2 moves on the outside, which have great potential to do other things, right? So there are throwaway stones that's not worth capturing, but they could be used by white sometime down the line. So that's why white has the flexibility and the upper hand in this situation. So black cannot be happy with just this connection, with just the corner territory here. So black has 2 choices, and the joseki will lead to the same pattern. One is to play the Atari first. White, of course, will have to connect, and black stands down here, right? Or black can stand down here first. And now the optimal move for white is to connect, right? If you play here, then we go back to one of those patterns that I said will be hard for white to pull off. This is more solid, right? This is more solid. You take care of your own cutting points at number 5, and black plays at number 6, right? It kind of occupies one of white's liberties, kind of keeping it semi-tight, right? It's not tight right now, but it could be tight after another move. If you just connect here, and this is too slow, right? Then white will just play an extension on the upper side. So if you play here, can black take sente? Not really. You should not take sente. White can cut here, and maybe something like this. White doesn't need to cut off this stone. White can just play on top. The corner is already very small, and white is flawless, super strong on the outside. So this is not worth it, right, for black to take sente in this situation. So black has to play. And the advantage of playing this way is that black gets this standing down move at number 4, which is very good for endgame, of course. You can always jump in, but also white is not completely alive yet, right? Sometime down the line, if you're attacking white, then if you jump in, then this just erases all the eye space on the upper side for white. Right? So this is a good move for both the endgame and for attacking, right? If you're talking about joseki, talking about opening, this is good for attacking, putting some pressure on white, rather than connecting here, right? If you connect here, white will probably play a move on the upper side first, right? It's not worth it for black to capture number 1, right? These are throwaway stones. It's actually not that easy to attack this group after number 5, right? If white connects here, then you can pincer. But if white plays something like this, and then white can connect, this group is already settled. There's nothing you can do to come in on the second line, right? So it's actually a huge difference. So that is why we get to this shape. And now what? Right? White is not happy to just play something on the upper side because the second line is open. Of course, black shouldn't play it right away. Black should play somewhere else, sometime down the line. Huge endgame move and potentially an attack move against this white group. So white will not be happy just playing this. What should white do? And the next move is something that you need to learn, right? It's not very intuitive, and that is this cut. Right, cutting here, it kind of exploits one of black's weaknesses in the situation. Of course, intuitively, you want to capture this way, right? This is very easy to calculate. This is how you usually capture number 7. But the problem, of course, is that number 9 becomes incente, right? It's a forcing move, right? Black cannot really afford to lose these 2 stones. White is already settled, and black's corner territory is mostly gone, right? So this is a little too big. And number 9 becomes a free move, right? White sacrificed number 7 on the inside. It's dead anyway. It's black's territory anyway. But number 9 became a free move. And now white can play this, right? This is a huge benefit, right? Because it solidifies white's territory, and white has a base. White is not afraid of being attacked anymore, right? So it's a huge benefit by playing number 9 in sente, forcing black's number 10 on the inside, right? Or of course, white can also just play something on the outside like this. Black can probably play the double hane here, maybe something like this. Yeah, so white can just keep building this wall, right? So number 9 is really big, and that is why it is not okay. Right? It is not okay for black to allow white to play number 9, the forcing move on the outside. So what should black do? Right? One thing is to play number 8. But number 8, the problem is that sometime down the line, standing down here will force black to play at number 10, right here on the 2-2 point. Black cannot block this way. Of course, black is still going to win this race to capture, but blocking on the outside at number 13, again, will be sente, will be in sente, right? So to prevent this move, black will have to block here. And now this shape right here will have potential agi and weaknesses. Of course, not that easy for most amateur players to pull off, but let me show you an example, right? So white will want to keep building on the outside, something like this. And then this means that black will have to keep playing here, right? If you play something like this, and the liberties get tight, then there will be all kinds of problems with this, right? Of course, any defensive moves are very slow in this situation, right? But let's say if you're trying to take care of number 17, then this is not good. Right? All of a sudden, black is very short on liberties. This is going to be a connect and die, so we wouldn't risk that. You can't push through here. So what happens now is that all of a sudden, white is out, but because of black's shortage of liberties. So this is just one example of what could happen. Right? It seems like number 7 and 9 are dead, but not 100%. Right? If black's liberty gets a little tight on the outside, there are ways for white to take advantage of this shape. So that is why number 8 also it's not optimal, right? It's actually not optimal in this situation. And that is why some situations AI would suggest black playing something like this, right? Which is kind of aiming for the cut, which will capture these 4 stones. Of course, if you're worried about these 4 stones, you can play a move to kind of protect it. Or AI is even suggesting white keeping up the pressure on the outside like this, and just allow black to capture these 4 stones. Play something on the outside. And this is still playable for white. This is okay, completely okay for white. And black does not have a huge advantage even after capturing these 6 stones on the corner. Right? So this is another way for white to play, to simply play toward the center. So just giving you some ideas. That's why number 8 also doesn't feel great for black. And that is why black needs to think outside the corner, right? Black can play this bending move on the second line. This is saying, I am keeping up the pressure on these 3 white stones. Now, with only 3 liberties left, this is a shortage of liberties. The liberties are really tight for white. And of course, number 7 is also dead, right? Don't even think about reviving it. This is simply too small, right? If you sacrifice the outside, this is totally not worth it, right? So number 7 is already dead, but black still owes a move, right? Black still owes a move sometime down the line. So white wants black to play a move on the inside, right? So you cannot allow black to come out on the upper side and be the base, right? That way, number 7 will be dead without black having to add a move. So that's why white needs to jump here, right? Kind of forces black to play a move on the inside to cancel all the aji, all the bad aftertaste of capturing number 7, right? And this is the joseki, actually. This is the joseki. White can already take sente in this situation. And of course, you see a lot of players would say white can add a move here, which is totally fine, of course. Just playing an extension on the upper side, but it's not absolutely necessary because I think the way it works is that if black plays a pincer, then white can always move out with number 13, right? You're not really afraid of these moves. This is a net. Or these 3 stones are already not valuable, right? These are throwaway stones, I would say. So that is why white is not afraid of an immediate pincer, right? You can always escape toward the center if you want. But of course, playing here will solidify this whole group. And this is definitely the joseki. There's no need for black to play anything else. But we do see a lot of amateur players play here on the second line, kind of aiming for this push and cut. Right? You might be thinking cutting here is really cool. But no. First of all, playing on the second line in the opening is not great. And pushing here also is not great because white will very happily trade these 3 stones for number 15 to solidify the shape on the upper side. So black has used 3 moves to kind of capture these 3 white stones, right? So 3 moves for 6 points, and that is 2 points per move. That is way too small for the opening, way too small. So number 12, big no-no in the opening. It's a big endgame move, of course, right? If black doesn't play it, if white plays it, this is a big endgame move, but should not play on the second line in the beginning of a game. So that is the joseki. What does each side get? So black, of course, gets the corner, gets number 8, potential, right? A big endgame move, right? It's not an attacking move anymore. It's a big endgame move because number 9 and 11 um, have canceled out the threat of number 4 of standing down here, right? With the sacrifice of number 8, 7 on the inside. So that's what black got. Pretty straightforward. What did white get? White's got a base on the upper side, and that's really important. That is really important. It may not seem like a lot, right? A lot of amateur players will prefer just grabbing the territory on the corner, but this is significant for white because what we mentioned at the beginning of this series is that the direction of play, right? After this large knight's enclosure, or any enclosure in this situation, the direction is this way, right? So black will want to play a move on the upper side. And this becomes important when you put it in a game, right? We can very easily show this pattern in a game, right? Because especially for amateurs, right, you want to play something like this, and black is hoping to play a number 7. This is a very nice setup. It's not that easy for white to attack, especially for beginners to attack and survive. And normally before this, we were teaching beginners and most amateur players to split the center, right? But still, black will get a 3-space extension from the corner, and sometime down the line, right, this is how it used to be played. Sometime down the line, black can still jump, and this is still a very nice setup. Very hard for white to challenge it. And later we say playing an approach on the corner is more valuable. But if you play this way, then again, with number 7, black has gotten to the upper side, or even black can play something like this. There's still a very nice setup, right? So white is not completely satisfied about stopping black from playing on the upper side after number 5, and this is where this joseki comes in, right? This is where this joseki comes in. If you play this joseki, then it is certain that black cannot develop on the upper side, right? After all these exchanges. So that is why this joseki is very common. It's a common strategy for white. But it's also okay for black. I think black can be happy in this situation, right? White should probably add a move here if the corner is black's, right? If you play elsewhere, then if it's something like this, white will probably want a base here. But of course, if there's something else more urgent on the board, white can take sente already. Or white can play an approach move, a little faster, but of course, black can try to split white into 2 groups and start a fight. So this will be exciting. So that was the basic joseki for white's attachment and black's hane on the inside. In the next video, we'll cover black's hane on the outside. So please stay tuned, and thank you for watching.